first and foremost, we have to be able to have a baseline to measure productivity, right? What I am having a hard time doing is quantifying that right now. And I think that is a nut we're going to crack here soon with a lot of this process automation that we're putting in place by using LLMs and AI.
Technology is transforming how we think, how we lead, and how we win. From InterVision, this is Status Go, the show helping IT leaders move beyond the status quo, master their craft, and propel their IT vision.
Welcome to Status Go. I'm your host, Jeff Tunn. Before we get into our episode today, I have a favor to ask. If you enjoy the Status Go podcast, whether you are a frequent listener or this is your first time joining us, tell a friend, send them a link or post on social media. Let others know about us. We appreciate it. Now, as they say, on with the show. One of the things that I love about hosting this podcast is the discussions we have about emerging trends. We usually do an episode or two at the beginning of the year to talk about the trends you should be keeping your eye on. One of those trends that always seem to be out there in the future someplace is AI. We've been talking about machine learning and AI for several years now, but always in that futuristic mindset, or maybe only for those companies with large data science budgets. But all that changed with the launch of ChatGPT and other generative AI models. It just exploded on the scene earlier this year. And now companies of all sizes are wrestling with, what do I do with it? How do I use it? What do we do? What constraints do I put on my team? It's a conundrum that many of us are facing. AI is such a game changer, and it's evolving so quickly that we're likely to be talking about it as an emerging trend for years to come. Today's guest is Jake Miller. Jake is the CEO of the Engineered Innovation Group. EIG's mission is to help organizations build new and meaningfully useful products and services. Jake is passionate about AI and its impact on innovation. I've had the opportunity to listen to him several times and host a panel that he sat on as well. And I guarantee you, you will walk away with insights and you will walk away energized by the possibility this technology can open up for you and your organization. Without further ado, Jake, welcome to Status Go.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm really excited to be here and for the conversation today.
Jake, I mean it sincerely. I have enjoyed every one of the conversations that we've had the opportunity to have over the last several months, including sitting across the table at dinner at an Indiana CIO Network event where you were on the panel. Before we dive into this topic of AI and what you're seeing and how you're using it, can you share a little bit about your background, your career journey, and what led you to the founding of EIG?
Yeah, I would love to share. So my background is pretty much in software engineering, though right before I became a software engineer, I studied English in university.
Oh, wow.
I was writing code and actually in high school. Surprisingly, I learned some COBOL. Still relevant.
All right, COBOL's still alive and well.
Yeah, apparently. And I went to university, so I went to IU at the Indianapolis campus. And I said, I'm having fun with the computer science program, the computer program here, but I kind of want to do something that will make me a little bit more well-rounded. Because I was already writing code. I was actually already making money from writing code as an independent consultant in the days of UHTML.
Yeah.
You could actually make pretty good money. And I said, well, let's study English. So I did. And I found a love for linguistics, actually, at the time. And so I really got deep into that. And then, having a computer and a technology interest already, natural language processing became something that was really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Didn't do a whole lot with that, except put it in the back of my mind for the next 20 years. So I after graduating college, I continued writing code. Then, about 10 years in, I started getting into engineering and product leadership. Um, so I've worked for companies in the healthcare industry like Indiana University Health. I worked for Allison Transmissions as a contractor on some really cool projects. Then I went to a company called Exact Target that if folks that are in
Yes.
Indianapolis are probably very aware of. And subsequently was purchased by Salesforce. I was director of engineering there for the marketing automation suite of products. After that, I did a startup. I co-founded a startup and served as CTO there. And then after about 4 years, I said, I'm ready to go do my next thing. I am a creator at heart. I
Hmm.
still write code to this day, not as much as I would love to. I still work with lots of startups. In fact, I'll talk about what EIG does here in a second. But I wanted to do that on a daily basis. I want to take
Yeah.
ideas and bring them to life, not just like bring an idea to life and then stay with it for 20 years. I wanted to really just help people like
Yeah.
bring their visions into the world. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am today. And I think you asked about, how did EIG get started?
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about that story, and then give a little bit more color as to what EIG does for its
Sure.
clients.
Yeah. So the Engineered Innovation Group, you can think of us as a software company. So we do software development for sure, but I don't like calling us a dev shop. I like calling us an innovation agency. And the reason is we don't just build software products, we build software organizations. So
Ah,
we provide product design, product marketing, software engineering, of course, artificial intelligence and data science services, site reliability, quality assurance. We will build out all the process, all the security and compliance needs, including the product itself, and help our clients build their organization. And eventually, if they typically are a VC-backed startup, they'll want us to peel off, keep their own people, but they have a fully functioning software company. Now we do the same thing, a slightly different flavor for mid-sized businesses and enterprises, but that was the genesis of the company. Was
yeah,
let's like take the brain or the cognitive overhead that every founder faces when they're trying to build a software company, take that out of the mix. Everyone needs to be able to log in, everyone needs to have the security, compliance, and privacy. Everyone needs infrastructure. Why are founders focusing on those things? Focus on your differentiated innovation. There's 10% of
yeah,
the thing out of all that you really care about, and that's your domain of expertise. And I wanted people to be able to do that. So that's what we do. And it really came the concept came out of my experience working with various startups, specifically when I was with MetaCX High Alpha. We were
hmm,
a High Alpha portfolio company, and I was working with other CTOs and founders, and I just saw the same mistakes being made over and over again. I also saw the timeline, and this is what I'm about to say is true for all venture studios. The timeline from an idea getting a green light and an investment to finding a founder, a technical founder, building a product, and getting something in hands and in market is a 6 to 12 month process. Why in the world is that not a 3 month process when
yeah, yeah.
80% is rinse and repeat for the most part, right? I'm generalizing. So that's where it came from. And over the past 2 years, we've just added service by service until we were able to have that full suite to provide to clients.
And for our listeners, especially those around the Indianapolis area, it seems like every other day I'm getting an update on LinkedIn that one of the area rock stars has joined EIG. You are building an amazing organization. So shout out to Karen and Hutch. I know they are on board with you folks, and I just can't wait to see what all you're doing. But let's dive into this.
Let's do it.
In the opening, I talked about AI as an emerging trend for years to come, and I actually stole that from you when we were talking a few days ago. What things are you seeing that lead you to that belief?
Yeah. So I actually like to look at a macro trend in technology to as like my backing data for this. The major one is in the amount of data that companies have been storing. So, right, so the 90s were about, oh, we have our application database, and now we need to get analytics from the application, the data, the data in that application. outcome data warehouses.
Yep.
People that are managing those. They still exist, of course. But then that moved on to, oh wow, now we have every person in our organization and all of our customers and all of our devices are producing information. We don't know what to do with it, but we're going to go store it in a data lake. And so you
Yep.
amass
Yep.
all of this data. Then come the 2010s, and neural networks really start getting the light of day. And we start realizing, wow, there's data science that we can apply here. There's machine learning techniques that are starting to pop up their head. But we have all the ingredients now for this to
Mhm.
really become exponential. The technology applications become exponential,
Yeah.
meaning speech and audio, like speech recognition, text to speech, emotion detection, the vision technologies for recognizing objects and people and faces, generative AI, the hot topic right now,
Yes.
creating
Yes.
text, summarizing documents, generating images, creating films, you know, all those things. When you look at each of those subdomains of machine learning and artificial intelligence, have matured to a point that now we can start connecting them. And when
Yeah.
you start
Yeah.
connecting them, for example, if we wanted to create and you actually had talked about a podcast that you did where you were using a large language model to interview,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Imagine
Yes.
putting a person's face, personifying that, a digital human twin behind with that model behind it, and that sophistication growing over time. Imagine the possibilities. We're going to be
Yes.
talking on our next podcast, Jeff, I hope, where we have one of my digital colleagues with us. We'll
Oh,
see how.
nice. Nice. Nice.
But
Yeah. We'll
like
do that. We'll do that.
that's where we're going and what I mean.
Well, and your excitement about this comes through, and I know a large part of this ties back to your background in linguistics and these large language models and natural language processing. It is all coming together. One of the things that I have found in our conversations, Jake, is that you are actually using AI at EIG. Not only are you helping your customers explore it, but you're using it. How have you brought this in as a tool to leverage for the work that you do?
Yeah, I love this question because we're finally getting to a point where we're starting to see traction. So, and some of these won't be a surprise to people, but one of them might be. So, first, we started just experimenting like every other company on the planet, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
large language models. What can we do with it? We're keeping privacy in mind.
right,
Especially being an agency, if we're working with clients and we're having uh, data or code from them, we don't put that into a large language model, at least not without permission.
right.
So we're using it in ways like Copilot. So code generation, code
Yeah.
assisting, that sort of thing. Not a surprise, probably at all. We are using it to help generate marketing concepts. So not actually building marketing, but
Hmm.
more as a sounding board. And I've actually found personally, this is something that's been very helpful to me. And actually, I've had a couple engineers when I polled the whole company. I'm like, hey, how are you personally using LLMs in your day to day work that we may not know? And
Yeah,
two
yeah.
individuals said the same thing that I had been doing. I use it as a sounding board. I have an idea, I throw it out there, and it kind of throws back some other ideas. And I go, oh, I wouldn't have thought about that. So it's like a
Yeah,
companion. That's pretty cool. I think a lot of people are doing that.
yeah.
The other, I think, is where we start seeing more sophistication and true application coming to light. And we are starting to use LLMs with a couple of our internal projects as a pilot to take information of people communicating in Jira
Hmm.
and all the information about the code, all the information about requirements, acceptance criteria, what's working, who's doing what, what's the status of things. So you can say, or I could say in the morning, hey, LLM, what is Joe doing? Or what has Joe done last week on
Yeah.
such and such in the project? And it can summarize it for me. Like being able to consolidate real world information quickly
Hmm.
is hugely valuable to anyone, really, but especially very
Yeah.
busy executives.
Well, and one of the comments that you made is you said this a couple of times actually, just like everybody is doing. I think you're selling yourself a little short. I think you are leading the charge on some of this, Jake, because I've talked at least in in the corporate technology world, not necessarily in the technology service world. In the corporate technology world, I think they're taking a little bit slower approach. So I think the lessons that you are getting from this are going to be helpful across the board. Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to pause right there. We're going to listen to an ad from Intervision Systems. As our listeners know, Intervision is the publisher of the Status Go podcast.
Unlock the power of more with Intervision Systems. We provide the cutting-edge technology and expert guidance you need to take your business to the next level. Don't settle for less. Choose Intervision Systems and discover what's possible. Contact us now to learn more.
And if you want to learn more, visit intervision.com. Today, we're talking with Jake Miller of EIG, and we're talking about this emerging trend, this exploding trend of AI, and how Jake and others at EIG are using it to advance their work and advance their clients' work. Now, I heard you speak. I think this was the panel that I moderated, Jake. So a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned productivity gains from your development staff, from your engineering staff, and before break, you mentioned that you're using Copilot. So, what kind of productivity gains are you seeing, first of all, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because it's something that I'm very passionate about. One of the ways that first and foremost, we have to be able to have a baseline to measure productivity, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as a new agency, this is something that we've continued to work on. And I was actually talking to actually Susan Orr at the IBJ the other day about this exact topic. And she asked me the same question. I said, well, it turns out getting my baseline has been a little bit more challenging than I thought. So that doesn't mean we're not going after it, but we are. So the numbers I've been saying, I want to see a 30% productivity increase in my organization over the next year, leveraging
Mhm.
AI. And that is still a true statement. What I am having a hard time doing is quantifying that right now. And I think that
Yeah,
is a nut we're going to crack here soon with a lot of this process automation that we're putting in place by using LLMs and AI, actually.
Mhm.
Um, some of the things I actually just talked about, like summarization, auto creation of acceptance criteria, that sort of stuff, right? It's kind of hard to quantify, frankly.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you, it's kind of a qualitative measurement, but I can give you categories of things that we're using there that
Yeah,
I am
yeah.
seeing, like anecdotal evidence that we are improving. So the first is Copilot itself, right?
Mhm.
The ability for us to increase individual productivity. We are seeing categories in like just communication, specifically. I was just talking about like with Jira, so summarization. We have now automations in place that are doing things like checking if someone's entered a ticket for work and the description, it's not just checking does this description exist, it's saying is it quality. So we're able to take
Huh.
that information from that ticket and say let's go ask it to be summarized by an LLM and use
Mhm.
a rubric to see is it a quality input or not. And
Yeah.
if not, we're going to publicly shame that person. No, just kidding. We're going to notify someone that there is a ticket put into a work status that really is not intelligible, at least flag it. Again, it's
Right.
an experiment,
Yeah.
but I've already noticed it increasing quality of the work we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another bucket. Um, and I would also say just things like writing copy. Not going to lie, I think
Yeah.
uh, getting frameworks in place for
Mhm.
presentations and such. It's been very, very helpful
Oh
on
yeah.
that front.
Yeah. I use it for the podcast. I use a
Yeah.
tool called Cast Magic, and what that platform does is it puts a UI on the front of, I think, ChatGPT on the back end, but it ingests the audio from the podcast and it creates marketing collateral. I mean, it's not
Ah,
finished product, right? But it'll go through, and you'll see the result of this when I send it to you later, Jake. Is it will go through our discussion today, and it will highlight quotes from you
that's cool.
that it felt were important for our conversation that you can then use in marketing. And it does a bunch of other things, but
Yeah.
saves 4 or 5 hours a week. But I
Yeah.
love this concept of leveraging it for developers. I interviewed a gentleman yesterday for the podcast that's upcoming, and we talked about the developer experience, and we've all talked
Yes.
about customer experience, employee experience, but developer experience, and how tools like AI can automate some of these things and make the developer's life easier, so
100%.
that they're more focused on the things that are vitally important to the end product. Are you
Yeah.
seeing those results? Also, you mentioned quality, but are you seeing that they're able to focus more on some of these other tasks now?
I don't think we have been able to fully realize its potential yet. I think
Okay.
it's just time will tell. I
Yeah.
feel pretty darn confident by the end of this year we will start realizing that. I
Yeah.
think one of the problems, like again, being our company's almost 2 years old, and we've really only had a team for a year, other than
Yeah.
myself and another person. And so, what we're rolling out with like process wise and such, I think that's the stuff that developers don't like doing, and that's where I want us to
Yeah.
focus productivity gains. So
Yeah. Yeah.
while I think it's really interesting, like the coding side and productivity gains from writing code, I think there's definitely use cases there. And actually, I'll give you a real world example here in a second. I think we can't forget in the realm of developer experience, what's all the other stuff that takes 1 or 2 hours a day?
Yeah.
Documentation,
Yeah.
making sure your statuses are in the right.
Every developer loves documentation.
And I love it. It's fantastic. And it's something I get really excited about. And we're doing this more on the customer front because, like, APIs we develop aren't our APIs, it's our customer's product, right?
Yeah.
Um, but talk about developer experience. Right now, developers have to go to a website and look at the API. And you guys probably talked about this in our last podcast, but
Hmm.
look at the API documentation, understand what every field is doing, yada, yada, yada. There
Yeah.
need to be tools in place where I say, I'm trying to connect the uh, this thing
Yeah.
here to that thing there. They both have APIs. Write the code to do it.
Yeah.
And it gets you 70% of the way there.
Right.
And I also think it's such an important point for people to realize. Don't think about these tools as replacements. Think of them as augmentation. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
if you can get even 50% of the way of where you need to go as a developer by using a tool,
Yeah.
wow, that's
Absolutely.
massive. you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah.
I think that's great, and I'll give a shout out to Octeto, Okteto. It's a developer experience platform, and that's
Love it.
I interviewed the CEO yesterday, Ramiro. I love this because my background is what you talked about COBOL in your opening. I was a COBOL programmer. That's what I did, man.
Love it.
We didn't call ourselves developers or engineers then. We called ourselves programmers.
Yep.
But I got this warm spot in my heart for the development team, and it's about time that we invested in tools for them. Now, I want to go back to another comment that you made as you were on a panel, and I know you probably love that I keep bringing this back up again every
Oh,
time you and
no.
I talk.
I
But
love it.
you were on a panel at the Indiana CIO Network, a gathering of CIOs, CTOs, and other technology leaders. And you said something that really caught my attention. And it was basically a message for the coding academies that are doing a fantastic job
Yep.
of bringing coders to the marketplace. But you talked about the future and what they need to be paying attention to. Can you share that message and elaborate a little bit for us?
Yes, I can. So there are two parts to this one. One's sort of an immediate, and the other one's a little bit longer term. And the first one is, and I don't think I said this in that particular interview, but the first one is we've got to start diversifying the content for students coming out of coding academies. Um, I interview so many people from coding academies, and I cannot tell you how many are taught React.js, all of them, and that's it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Please, let's start teaching computer science fundamentals, like
Yeah.
data
Yeah.
structures, algorithms, and please, let's start teaching data.
Yeah.
And when you start seeing these trends in AI, like we're talking about, and this will segue into the part 2 of this,
Yeah.
is we need more people that understand how data works, how data is stored, how data is
Yeah.
processed, how data is structured. And that's a massive gap. And I've seen that for 5, 6, 7 years for sure. And so I'm hoping that we start seeing that gap get filled, because it's a big opportunity, not just for the coding academies, but for the people that are going through those academies and looking for the job opportunities. That's a big
Yeah.
gap.
Yeah.
But that's step 1. Step 2 is, what is going to happen with software engineering jobs? So the
Yeah. Yeah.
hypothesis in like any intelligent person, I keep changing my perspective on this. So we'll see
Well, you
how
learn more, you
accurate it is.
gather information. You're a large language model and you're learning from the data.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, uh, but the question comes up frequently: what's going to happen to software engineers? Will their jobs
Yeah.
be replaced? And if they're not going to be replaced, what's going to happen? And I foresee what's going to happen is things that are like higher level programming. That's not a judgment call on whether it's a good or a bad. That's like higher
Right.
level,
Right.
like okay, right? Like, so developing frameworks for an interface. Let's say you're building a web application and you need some scaffolding for code. That's going to be automated. You're going to talk to an LLM, or you're going to, and you can actually do this today. There's some tools, rudimentary, fundamental tools, but there are tools where you can provide it a Figma design, and it will
Mhm.
go write the code for you.
Yeah.
There's going to be more and more of that. So what does that mean? Well, those are the things typically we assign to the more junior engineers.
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
means you're going to have the folks that are more specialized, or that have the more in-depth knowledge of the technology, like how data works,
Mhm.
um, are going to be the more sought after individuals.
Yeah.
Just a hypothesis, but
Yeah.
that I see us going that direction. And
Yeah.
the sophistication of technology is going to require, when we're working with LLMs, or not just LLMs, but I will use artificial intelligence as the broad umbrella. We're going to need more people that know how to train the LLMs, to train the
Yeah.
technology to do what we want it to do, versus smashing keys on a keyboard
Right.
and typing out discrete lines of code.
I had a conversation the other day with John Light, the CEO of Sabretooth, out of the Houston area, and he was talking about, and I kind of agree with this as well, is that in addition to the points that you just made, that we need people to understand more about the data, more about the large language models, that we're going to have almost a verticalization or a specialization. You're not going to be able, as a developer, float between retail and manufacturing, manufacturing and healthcare and
Mm-hmm.
another industry. You're going to have so much domain knowledge uh, to marry with because data behaves differently in different domains, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so you're going to have that as well. Are you seeing that as a possible trend as well?
I to play devil's advocate on
Hmm.
that. I would be interested to see if the models that we're creating will become those domain experts.
There
So
you
you
go.
don't
There you
have
go.
so in fact it would be the opposite. Generalists of the domain are now have more access to opportunity, because we're augmented with those
Yeah, yeah.
experts. I
Interesting.
We'll see.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I feel like I
That's
got a product
fascinating.
company here.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
um,
Jake, I want you to get out your crystal ball here,
okay.
and I'm going to ask you to predict the future in two different time frames. So, We're sitting here as you and I are talking. It's August 2023. What are you think we're going to be seeing out of these LLMs and the incorporation of them into our businesses? What do you think we're going to see in the next few months? Next, call it 6 months. And then the
Yeah,
follow up to that would be how about a year or two down the road? So 6 months and then a year or two down the road.
yeah, I love it. So I think the next 3 to 6 months, what we are going to see are real world practical applications of LLMs. There's been so much experimentation, and part of my job is I see startup ideas and concepts come across my desk every single day, and 95% in the past 3 months have been with LLMs.
Yeah.
And we're going to see what's working and what's not. So just like I talked about earlier, like I had a prediction 2 months ago about what my company was going to do. Turns out it's not exactly what I thought it was going to do. We'll get there, but everyone's going to start having those realizations about what's
Yeah.
working for them and what's not as an organization. I think more broadly speaking, we're going to see more security and privacy tools that are empowered by AI. And I don't just mean like for network monitoring or intrusion detection. I mean tools that are helping us be smart about privacy information and
Yeah.
IP going into LLMs and that sort of thing. I think that is going to open the door majorly for big corporations to start being comfortable opening up opportunity to their employee base,
Yeah.
where then we'll get to see what's the next 3 months after
What it can
that,
really do. Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
can really do in those bigger organizations. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see this progressing. Do you want me to jump into my long-term 2 or 3
Yeah.
year?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm going to say my 3 to 4 year prediction
Okay.
is the human computer interaction that you and I know today, that is mouse and keyboard primarily, some
Mhm.
voice, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
is going to be displaced by some percentage. I'm going to make one up. Let's say 30 or 40% by
Okay.
pure human to digital human interaction. And so I'm not going to be typing. I'm not going to be using my mouse to point and click. I'm not going to write code. I'm going to say, hey, computer, or hey, Paula, I'm trying to figure out X, Y, and Z of this information in this file. Can you give me the forecast of blah, blah, blah? Yes, I can do that. Here is the result.
Uh-huh.
That is where I think we are going. And I will think it is a big mess or a big miss on our part as humans and technologists and innovationists if we don't do that.
Yeah. I look forward to that day in some ways. And in other ways, I'm like, oh my God, is the person sitting next to me on the plane going to be talking to their AI model while we're trying to fly? And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
no, no, no. But no, I love those predictions, Jake, and would love to have you back maybe the middle of next year or something. And let's carve that up and say, well, how did it? Where are we in that, right? Because that's the beauty of it is emerging and it is changing over time. Jake, I got to thank you so much for being on Status Go. I learn so much every time you and I talk. I enjoy our conversations. I am already looking forward to the next time we get a chat. So thank you for carving out time for us today.
Absolutely. And the same to you. I always enjoy our conversations. I appreciate it.
To our listeners, if you have a question or want to learn more, visit intervision.com. The show notes will provide links and contact information. And if you're interested in continuing this discussion, look for the Status Go podcast group on LinkedIn. We'll get a dialogue going about AI and where you're using it in your organization. This is Jeff Tunn for Jake Miller. Thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Status Go podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes or get more information at intervision.com. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, find Intervision on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thank you for listening. Until next time.